Antifada, the arachno-communist podcast for interdimensional spiders who want to abolish the value form. I'm Jamie Peck.
I am Sean Gaby.
I am anarcho-spider Andy.
And we're here with two amazing, exciting guests today. Brett and Brian from Street Fight Radio.
Hi.
Hey, what's up? Woo!
Hi, guys. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, this is great. Y'all do good work.
Well, thank you.
You do too. I think probably you're like the anarchist Johnny Appleseeds of leftist podcasts. You know, wherever you go, you just spread the love.
Thank you for not saying the Velvet Underground, because that means we don't get to make the money.
And that's also such a played out reference. Like everybody says that about everything.
I gotta say, Brian, I love your fashion statement of wearing the headphones at all times. Like, it's kind of like how an athlete might wear like part of their uniform around their neck.
The thing is, I need the headphones because I never like want to hear the world around me.
Uh-huh.
And the meme, the sad Brian thing, I had the headphones on, and then from that day, I was just like, well, I guess people want to see the headphones, so I just put the headphones on, and now it's a habit. I should take it off because I don't do all that stuff. Like it used to be like, you need to wear jeans and you need to wear boots and a flannel when you're out there. And now I'm like wearing long sweat shorts and like I don't need the headphones anymore.
He's evolving.
Yeah.
He's going to get AirPods next.
I'm not. I can't.
Oh,
I'm
boy.
afraid to lose those things.
Yeah, no, fuck that.
Yeah.
I can't even wear earbuds at all. They fall out of my ears, or I just cram them in there and it hurts me. So the AirPods are like a recipe for... No, just give me some normal-ass headphones that go over my head. It's fine.
Doesn't the white cord look cool though? Like it's so like I like different colored cords because when I was a young man they were all white, okay, or all black. Sorry, all the cords were black. So I like all the different color cords and stuff like that. It's nice.
Why not? Switch. That's what capitalism gives you: is lots of different options, the same cord but in different colors.
Mm-hmm.
So
worth it.
All three of us here in the studio, we're fortunate to go and see Street Fight Radio live last night at Littlefields in Brooklyn, and I have to say, guys, was it fucking lit? I thought it was pretty fucking lit.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Yeah, I paid very close attention because we're going to steal everything from you for our own live show that we're doing pretty
Hopefully
soon.
Matt Chrisman specifically.
Oh my God,
he's the
what
best.
a treasure.
How about like me and Brett have been saying this for like 3 years now since we started performing with those guys, is that Matt could go up by himself and be like Sam Kinison and be the biggest comedian in the world.
He's our generation's Louis C.K.
Let's
Without
hope
the bad
not
parts.
in every way.
Yeah, he doesn't like sex at all.
Yeah, not that I know.
He's Volcel.
You heard it here first, folks.
Him and Slavoj Žižek.
But
That's actually, I will say that like those guys get a lot of shit, but we've been hanging out with them now since 2016, and they've like never said anything creepy about women around us because we're like very anti-creepy about, like, I don't ever want to hear what a woman looks like when you leave the room. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear it. I fucking worked blue-collar jobs for 15 years where that's all anybody talked about. So, like, now that I'm in this space, I don't want to hear it. And, like, those guys have been nice. They have never said anything nasty, which is why it's so fucking weird to me that these people, like, you know, they'll call them like date rapists and shit like that and bros. And I'm like, they're like nerd guys.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
never
Yes.
say
Yeah.
anything sexual.
I haven't heard that either.
I mean, I don't make the cool rules. I just know them. But those guys are nerds.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're
definitely.
the authority.
If I had to put them into any kind of subcultural pigeonhole, I would say that they're nerds.
It's funny to call them bros. Like, it's so, like, that whole thing with the Bernie bro thing cracks me up because it's like, former probably bro, would never have hung out with anybody that was, that like, they consider Bernie bros when I was like a really bad dude.
Yeah, well, I guess people have sort of a vaguer definition of bro as being just like whenever a group of millennial males get together, they think it's a little bro-y. And like I get the vibe. It's a very it's a masculine-ish kind of vibe, but like
No, it's naming something that, like, bro culture, it exists, also has to be stopped.
Well, yes, certainly.
Patriarchy is just as bad for men. I mean, not just as bad, but it is.
I wouldn't
cut
say
that.
that.
Cut that. I'm going to say patriarchy is also bad, but I'm going to stop and restart that so I didn't say what I actually said.
You leave that in, Andy.
No, fuck that.
Self-crit.
That's what Sean really believes.
Oh,
everybody.
shut up.
Okay, so we're gonna get you guys on Street Fight now, where we don't edit anything.
Oh God.
And make you say bad things.
Yeah. Patriarchy is obviously most horrific for women, but it also distorts men's lives and men's psychology as well. I mean, I work in the building trades, blue collar. It's almost always men. And it's just the most boring, basic-ass conversations about women, talking shit about sex and, like, tits and whatever. And it's just, I get it. It's like a way to socialize. But it's not particularly interesting. You're bonding, but what are you bonding over? Like, we think women are attractive. We want to have sex with them. Wow, I had sex last night. Cool. Like, it's not, there's so much other shit to talk about. It's fucking lame.
You're also in a room full of married men that aren't like probably having sex even once a week.
Lots of rub and tugs in my line of work, but
we
not
are
a lot
in
of sex.
a sex recession right now.
That's true. That's true.
That's sad.
I was anti-sex, but then Brett made me talk about how I have sex on the podcast. Now I'm a pervert to our fans because I said you should be more polite when you have
like
sex.
Howard Stern, like you had sex on the podcast, or
Brett?
He came up with 5 simple rules for sex.
5 simple rules is you ask if the person wants to have sex, and then you politely move back and forth on top of them. And then you politely roll over and say thank you, and then you say never talk about it again. That's that's
the
my
mindset.
folks at home, if you need to pause it and take a cold shower after that hot talk right there.
What if Howard Stern but respectful?
What if Howard Stern but afraid of sex?
What if Street Fight Radio, but instead of having a porn star sit on a Sibian like you guys did?
Yeah. Well, porn star looked at us.
Well, I also accidentally mentioned that spitting in mouths is hot, so now the fans are bugging us to hear more of that, and I don't know if that's going to work either. So I don't want to put that out there either.
Everyone's got their own special taste.
Sure.
Don't want to yuck anyone's yum.
Of course.
I do. Like, actually, that's my role on the show is to yuck everybody's yum.
Speaking of yuck and yum, because you guys performed and we attended. I drank a lot. I just actually pulled the trigger in the bathroom. I was feeling so ill, and I vomited.
TMI, babe.
Everybody's a little worse for wear. So I
feel great. Speak for yourself.
Shush, I'm jealous.
I actually feel great right now. A lot of euphoria.
4
from
hours of
something.
sleep and a dab, and I'm
Don't
rolling.
say.
All right. Well, I was gonna say that one of my favorite hangover cures is a little thing. It starts with a K and it ends with a Kratom. And that Kratom is definitely helping me this morning. Do you guys have any experience in the world of Kratom?
We sold it.
Yeah,
for
we
a
were
period.
moving weight, major weight. Yeah, we used to sell it in our store on our website to raise money for the show, generate funds and everything. And eventually, in Ohio, it got into a legal gray area, and the Department of Agriculture started raiding shops in town.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to deal with that shit.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Dude,
that's why we're here.
That's the lamest drug penalty. Like, I'm in here for Kratom.
Oh my god.
Well, I mean, that's why we're here, really. We had to supplement. So the show, we weren't making a ton on Patreon for a long time, so we sold the Kratom as a way to kind of get it to the point where then me and him didn't have to work a job. So then when they took the Kratom and CBD away from us, we just have to tour incessantly now and
Whoa.
always be
I
away
thought
from our
CBD
Why did
family.
they
either?
do that? I thought those things were legal.
Well, CBD is, Brett's going to look into it, I think, when we get back. CBD's kind of legal now in Columbus, but they still raid you for it. They don't care.
And sometimes it'll be treated exactly like plant material. Like they're charging people with felonies. There was a
Jesus.
distributor bringing it into Ohio and is facing a felony on like a truck full of it as if it's
Jesus
illegal.
Christ.
That
As
is
if it's
not
THC.
even real weed.
No,
No.
it's barely medicine.
Yeah.
It's
What
like a better it's like a more healthy Tylenol PM. Basically,
Yeah.
is what it is.
Dude,
Yes.
at the Associated supermarket up the street from our house, that the checkout counter, they have like the impulse buys, like dead ass. They have fucking CBD chocolates like at the fucking supermarket.
Oh yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
in
Ours
New York
does
City.
too. Yeah.
But they still get busted for it. So.
We have a place in town called CBD, and it's got a really, I don't know exactly what it stands for.
Columbus Botanical Depot.
Columbus Botanical Depot, and they sell CBD there. The shitty thing about it is the guys that this is very capitalist too. Is the guys that got into it now are charging like way more than it's actually worth. Because we just went to California and saw what they're selling. Well, no, not even California, Portland. When we went to Portland, Oregon, we saw what they were selling this stuff for, and it's cheap there. There's like a glut of weed, and everything's so cheap, and it's like. In Columbus, you couldn't realistically use CBD as like a holistic cure, unless you make $50,000 a year at least.
Well,
because
that's the
it's
problem
expensive.
with legalization too. Like we're going to get legal weed in New York probably this year, and it really tends to favor people with tons of money because there are so many regulations and it's so expensive, which is why people are saying like we need to build in some kind of funds, some kind of grants for the people who have been hurt the most in the communities who've been hurt the most by marijuana criminalization.
Right. I just saw a story that your recreation, that they were getting ready to have recreational weed here. We did this in Columbus too. And like, I think it's really cool because it's a really hard decision to make. In Columbus, what they wanted to do was legalize weed, and about 8 people, including Nick Lachey from 98 Degrees, were the only people allowed to grow and sell it. There were going to be 8 companies that were allowed. It was baked in, and maybe if successful in 5 years, they would let 4 more companies. So there would be 12. And we voted it down. Me and Brett were against it. And a lot of people got really mad at us in the city because they were like, oh, this is our chance. This is our only chance. And I was like, this is a worthless chance. This is nothing. You can't grow it at home. You can't smoke it outside. You can't do anything with it. Why not do our own? And so now thank God for crazy libertarian guys. Some crazy libertarian guys drafting a bill that we're going to vote on where it's like you can grow as much as you want. You can do all this stuff. So we're hoping that one passes. But
unfortunately, there's a rider attached that also makes pedophilia legal, though, right? That's the that's the tough part with those libertarians.
But here I saw that they voted it down because there wasn't equity in it for the people who are already selling weed. And I'm like, if New York is able to do that, that's incredible, because she's the woman that stopped it is trying to get people pardoned and out of jail, and also those people get out of jail, they get to have equity in the weed business, and that's the only fair way to do it. And it sucks that the guys that are getting this passed are these venture capitalist guys that are just like, oh, I just see a lot of money in weed. It sucks.
Yeah, John Boehner is investing heavily in it.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
He's one of the shitheads from our
damn
state. He owns a crappy bar outside of town, but we've never been. We should go someday.
We want to go
Oh,
someday
wow.
and
You should
smoke.
meet him. That'd
That
be
sounds
cool.
like a good
Put it on my
Gonzo
calendar.
story.
Yeah.
waiting
We're
to
going to go
happen.
there. We're going to sit down at the bar. We're going to smoke a Marlboro Ultralight and drink an MGD 64.
and then he's gonna cry on your shoulder.
It's the only place you go where the bartender cries to you.
Man.
I wanted to ask you guys a couple questions from our Discord community.
Shout out to our Discord.
Shout out
community.
to our Discord community. You guys are rad. I've got a serious one, but I'll start. You know what? They're both serious. I shouldn't say that. So, question from our Discord that they wanted to ask you is, quote, are 9 Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson new metal? Question mark.
I can answer this for you. When I was a new metal guy, I was very into new metal growing up. I had this thing in my head that there are 9 Inch Nails people and there are Marilyn Manson people. And
Two
I was
genders.
I was a Marilyn Manson guy. So Marilyn Manson, new metal, 9 Inch Nails is for snobs and mean people that listen to industrial music.
Oh, man.
Shots fired, Jamie.
Wow. This question kind of threw me for a loop, but go on.
I would also say that nu metal people really try to make it into a very narrow window, but it was a scene at a time, and there has to be a variety of sounds. I'll say Rage Against the Machine is nu metal as well.
Don't say that.
Oh,
They
interesting.
do the
Interesting.
wiki stuff, so that's rappy.
It's weird because they started off like they were in hardcore bands and they were like post-hardcore, but I think I do buy you that like that putting in that weird Tom Morello guitar shit does make them vaguely nu metal. Good
Wow.
politics,
This
but
is-
they might be nu
We're
metal.
doing world systems theory right now. Like every new step, every new phase has elements of what came before
It's a
and also
dialectic.
what will come after. So in that
Yes.
sense, I suppose Marilyn Manson could have been some kind of proto nu metal artist.
Well, here's a thing about like, so nu metal has a bad name, right? Like everybody's like, I would never listen. I hate nu metal, and so a band. If you say a band that was very nu metal, the best example of this is Deftones, right?
Fucking love the Deftones.
Right, you
I'll
love
die
the
on that
Deftones.
hill.
Yeah, we all love the Deftones, and they were my favorite band growing up. And I was also into like Korn and Nonpoint and Spineshank. And Deftones are definitely nu metal. They're 100%. They were part of that scene. Them, Korn, and Limp Bizkit were kind of like the Who, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones. Those were the three bands, right? And like every time I post about nu metal and say one of my favorite nu metal band is the Deftones, people are like, well, they're technically not nu metal. And I'm like, you're right. You're rewriting history because you don't want to be the person that listens to nu metal because
That's
you
fair.
don't want to be a person that enjoys nu metal. That's why when Brett said Rage Against the Machine is nu metal, people will argue that they're not nu metal because they don't want to be a person that listens to nu metal.
Yeah, no,
I get it.
that makes sense. And
I
System of
probably
a Down
have
too,
done
right?
that myself. I'm
Yeah.
guilty.
System
Guilty
of a Down is
charged.
another one
Yeah.
where they'll say they're not nu metal. Now, here's my thing
That's
about
ridiculous. They're incredibly new metal.
Yeah, they really are.
Here's my thing about System of a Down and Rage Against the Machine that I've recently come to. We're talking about subjects of songs, and Marilyn Manson kind of sometimes falls in this too. If you're like doing social commentary, I feel like that is a subset of nu metal that might not be exactly in the real spirit. Like nu metal is not supposed to be about anything.
Yeah, no. It's
supposed
like,
to be men
I'm
hating
so
people.
crazy
Yeah.
and fucked up,
Yeah.
and I'm a dude from the suburbs.
Yeah.
Listen to this twisted fairy tale.
Well,
Here's some-
System of a Down has a prison abolition song
hell
opening
yeah.
their second album, and on their first album they have a song about spiders.
And
Anarcho
That's
spiders.
what I wonder. I wonder, like, is it fair to call them Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down? Even because, like I said, Marilyn Manson did some political stuff. I think that like a lot. I'll say this. I went to Ozfest '97 where Marilyn Manson played. And that, I feel, in my life was the last time people freaked out about an artist. There was a
Oh,
plane.
yeah. I talk about this a lot, by
was,
the way.
It was crazy because there was a plane flying over the amphitheater with one of those things that says, Jesus loves you, please don't listen to this music.
Oh my God.
And there was a bomb threat at the show, and they had to like move everybody to one side of the amphitheater to keep from getting, I guess, blown up by a Christian for listening to music.
it's America.
Wow.
Story checks
It
out.
is so hard for me to explain to younger millennials how freaked out people used to be by Marilyn Manson.
It was weird. And it's, you know what it is? My brother Brett knows him now pretty well. He works with us. My brother is like just the most regular guy.
Yeah, like he's like man. Like I can't call myself a man when I'm standing around him. He could like pick up an anvil over his head.
That's normal. He's a regular ass
Wow.
dude.
And he had his mind blown by Marilyn Manson because he went and saw him in the very early days open for He went to see Motorhead and Danzig.
Oh, that's a good show.
And Marilyn Manson was the opener, and he pulled his pants down and put his dick between his legs and walked around on stage. And my brother, this is 1994, and my brother fucking just had no idea how to deal with it in his mind. He loved the music, and he was like, I don't know. He came home, and he was just like, I don't know if I should listen to it. It was good music, but I was very weirded out by this man. I did get to see a lot of those bands in very small venues. Like I
so jealous.
I saw Limp Bizkit at this place called, at a 400 seat venue called the Alrosa Villa, where Dimebag Darrell was shot. I saw Limp Bizkit play there with Monster Magnet opening for them.
Ooh.
And it was like there were only 100 people there, and Limp Bizkit didn't play any of their songs. They only played Slayer songs. They played Hound Dog by Elvis. They just were like, we're not going to play any of our songs, and just did all covers, and it was so cool. I have this affection for the new metal scene because I was in the Midwest and there for everything that happened.
Yeah.
I was at Woodstock '99. I have all the
It's like being at CBGB's in the early 70s.
except for loser rednecks.
So, speaking of the middle of the country, I feel like we kind of hang out in our coastal elite bubble sometimes.
Most of the
it's
time.
always good to get perspectives from other places. So I wanted to ask you guys how things are going in the middle of the country right now. Specifically, what's the landscape of the left looking like?
Well, we're bad people to ask that because the left sort of gathers around us in Columbus, So the only difference is that when we go see my in-laws or my dad, I get to see weird politics, and his parents are. He just told me on the way down here, that his parents subscribe to a magazine called Support. That is just about cops and troops.
Wow. Get out of here.
And I want to read it more than
supporting the police.
It's a Blue Lives Matter glossy.
Yeah, magazine comes in the mail every single month.
Oh my God.
I'm going to have to. I'll get one.
Magazine.
Yeah.
Cha-cha.
just a magazine is. Make sure you support the boot that's on your neck all the time. All the boots, the different boots.
It's a variety of boots.
My father-in-law is Chapo did an episode about a place called The Villages. Do you guys know The Villages?
I
Yeah.
don't remember this story, but
Okay.
That was a great
go on.
episode.
My father-in-law voted for Obama twice. I had him talked into drug legalization. Then he moved to The Villages for 5 years. He moved back, and now he's racist, and he loves Donald Trump, and he watches InfoWars all day.
What the fuck?
Completely flipped him back the other way. So those are the only real conservative people. So to ask me and Brett about what the left on the Midwest looks like, it's when we're with the left, it's there's 100 people in a room looking at us and being very excited about the left.
I'll say it's actually doing pretty well, in my opinion. There is a Black Lives Matter group called People's Justice Project that has been around for more than a decade now, and they've taken over City Hall. They've done a lot of protests, flash mob protests out of nowhere. They were part of organizing interrupting the Pride Parade. Why did I say Parade? The Pride Parade in Columbus. So they're accomplishing a lot. The DSA is very active. I'm not a member of it because I don't want to fucking get them in trouble or anything.
I
we
worry
have
about
friends like
that
too.
so much.
So
by the way.
I do Meals on Wheels through them. I put on a DSA T-shirt and do Meals on Wheels. I do Planned Parenthood stuff like that through connections from DSA, and then then they keep me informed on protests that are happening and everything else. And then we also have a woman that I think in asylum in a church that's been there now for almost 18 months, and there's a pretty dedicated community of people that have kept her safe from any legal troubles. So it's really active, in my opinion.
That's great.
It's small, and nobody else in the city knows it's going on, but if you pay attention, it is there. And DSA is also launching a brake light clinics all month long. They had the most successful brake light clinic that's ever happened. They did 100 cars or something. So they're going to keep it rolling.
Nice.
Our Food Not Bombs is picking up again.
Nice.
I just talked to them. I'm working on being a driver during the day for picking up food.
Nice.
They're incredibly well planned. I talked to the guy. He's just super atypical spreadsheet guy that loves to move information around.
Typical anarchist.
Yeah.
Finally, we have a positive reference to Food Not Bombs on this show. Every time we mention it, we're just throwing shade at it for no reason.
I know. All three of us have been in it and talked shit on it, even though it's great. It's
just comes down to who the membership is. So they're able to get leftover produce at the airport that our local food bank can't pick up. because they have to bring a semi-truck trailer.
Andy would like to know the address of that. He's our anarcho-mapache, but sorry, go on.
And then they take that and they do free produce giveaways once a month, and they give 200, 300 people, they give a bag full of food to them. So they are accomplishing a lot.
I actually did. When I was in college, I had to do a study about food deserts in Columbus. And it is a large city in size. It's one of the larger cities in the Midwest in like size, but and population. And there's so many of them there that like anybody even handing out there's no produce in a lot of the neighborhoods there. So like Food Not Bombs going there and giving people even an orange is probably the most vegetables they're gonna get, because they got to buy their groceries from a gas station, and we don't like have bodegas.
Yeah, there's no
know?
like economy of like, small grocers that y'all have here with the fresh produce and stuff. There isn't enough street traffic to even warrant that, or people that are going to go.
Unfortunately, here in the city too, the food deserts exist because there's the bodegas, but most of them in the underprivileged areas in the city don't sell any fresh produce.
Right.
It's like candy, cigarettes, and beer, and whatever. So it is a problem here for sure.
Right. You see liberals complain about. I've seen so many liberals complain about like people without much money eating poorly, like, oh, they eat McDonald's every day. That's why they're broke. But you're like, the only thing by their house is McDonald's and
they
Burger
have no
King.
money, and they could feed their entire family for like $20.
Well, something Brett said very early on Street Fight that resonated with me was like, you could go to Burger King and get like 3,000 calories, or you could go to the grocery store and buy like a piece of broccoli and try to like sustain yourself while you're roofing all day.
2 hours worth of work.
Right.
Social reproductive labor. Yeah. So, I know Andy doesn't really like it when we talk about parenting on this show, but I'm sorry.
I only don't like it when you talk about
just
it.
Oh, okay.
You guys can talk about it.
Okay. So fine. So I won't even talk. Well, I'm not a parent, so like it doesn't even matter. But like, Sean and I have been talking about like whether or not we're gonna have kids and stuff. We're kind of the age when people do it in New York. Anyway,
See, this is what I'm talking about.
Okay, I'm getting to it. God.
All this smut.
This is a sexy show.
So anyway, and we think about it in terms of, our politics and, if the revolution happens that we've been working for our entire lives, what if we die and our kids are orphans? That would really suck for them. And this is a thing that I think about a lot, actually. Maybe I'm just being neurotic. I don't know. But you guys are both dads, and I've seen photos of your child. She's very cute. I haven't seen yours, but I'm sure your kid's cute, too.
I don't know. She's 14. It's hard to... the luster's gone.
She was very cute on the episode that she was on. That was
cute. That is awesome. You potted with your kid.
We do it every about 6 months, 7 months. She's kind of boring. Like she doesn't.
She's 14, right?
Yeah.
I heard one that was good.
We started when she was 8, and we do them every few months, and she's pretty good. She's getting better.
Cool.
Yeah, she's starting to understand it's a show more.
Yeah, before it would be like, hey, so what'd you do? I don't know.
You guys will make a podcast out of her yet.
Wow. So the question I was going to ask you is, how has being parents changed your outlook on politics and the future?
I guess for me, like I'll go first in that, like, it changed everything. It was like, before she was born, so my daughter was born in 2004, and that's the run up to that election. I was worried about. I was a John Kerry guy. I was like, oh God, this John Kerry, he's going to be great. He's going to be the president. He's going to beat George W. Bush. And when he lost, I was pretty devastated. And I think after that, I did like sort of a period of. I did a Ron Paul period because I'm a white man and you have to do that. That's like a rite of passage where you have to like Ron Paul for a little bit. But then I voted for Obama, and when it looked like I was so excited about him, and then when it looked like nothing was going to happen, he wasn't going to do anything, and he didn't do anything, right, for 8 years, it radicalized me immediately, because it's like, oh, man, this kid is going to have to grow up in this shitty world, and there's like no opportunity to do anything. And it like, everything changed. You know, it was like all these institutions that I for some reason believed in seemed pointless, and it was like I don't care if she has to. I know that my daughter's going to live through times of like pretty big time destabilization, and it's just to me about like preparing her to go into the world and be ready to deal with other people and to be ready to work with other people and to understand that like we're gonna have to work together to make things happen. I tend to feel less worried about like armed insurrection. I think a lot of this is gonna be people talking and like building connections and building communities. And I want her to be ready to go out there and be a part of the community. So like I treat her like an adult. I've always treated her like an adult since she was a kid. I let her she makes 1/3. She has a 1/3 voice in most of the decisions in the house. I mean, there's some things that it's like, you're not going to tell me where to spend my money, but, but she's a 1/3 voice in the house. And like, we just treat her like an adult because, you know, whatever happens in this world, I just want her to have the confidence that I didn't have and to go for the things that she wants, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I think it did kind of strengthen things. Or, I mean, I had my daughter after doing the show, starting the show, and after becoming an anarchist. And I think through meeting the people that we met and all of the connections and meeting like the rebels and outlaws and renegades, and, you know, even though I'm just doing like the entertainment gig here, there are people out there that are carving out lives that are completely incredible and unique that aren't office worker fucking zombies. And it's going to take collaborating and understanding and working with those people in the future, whether it's because it is armed insurrection or whether it's because there's a disaster. The future is going to require people that are prepared and ready to do it, and I'm going to make sure that that's what my daughter does. I mean, me and my wife decided to have a kid because we both felt comfortable guiding another person into this world. You know, they are the future. You know, they're like time travelers. They're going to carry this forward. And, you know, I don't give a fuck about what happens after I die, and I know it won't be anything at all. So I'm not even worried about that and what's going to happen with it, because overall, I think life is a miraculous thing, and I still believe in like everybody and that we can get over this shit, even though we're manipulated in a million ways. I just can't give up like my compassion for humanity.
Well, that's a very good answer.
Sorry.
No, don't.
Wasn't funny at all. It's 0 out of 10.
Oh, I'm like getting emotional
Canceled.
just listening to the stuff you guys are saying.
Well, I want my kid. My kid is 14 now, and is like, she's been an active voice in her home. Like that, if people, some guy walked out of the show yesterday saying, "How are you anarchists?" Like, one of the ways is that my house isn't a hierarchy. The 14-year-old girl has basically the same voice as the 40-year-old parents, and we let her make decisions. And you know, Brett can vouch for me. Like, my kid is a good kid. Like, Gwen is good, and she doesn't get in trouble at all. She doesn't do any of the stuff that I did as a kid. She doesn't sneak out. She doesn't do drugs. She doesn't do any of that stuff. And she just wants to be a good person. And I think that, like, if somebody had prepared me for the world, maybe this thing would have happened a little earlier, I guess, and we would be further along. But I also think that in my mind, we all think that we live in a time when people are going to take up arms against the government, and it's just, if it happens, it happens, but it really feels like we're stuck. And like that my kid's probably going to exist in the same world that I had to exist in. I want it to be better. She might get like universal health care or something like that, but she's going to have to exist in the same world I existed in.
Yeah. At the very beginning of the show, I would just wish for a day where everybody would just stand up and leave and start walking or taking whatever transportation they had to and just storming Washington, D.C. and just destroying the whole thing. But if I were to try to do that now, I would just end up in fucking jail and be rot away. You know, there's just not a critical mass and to push anything in that direction. And it's insidious the way that that people are living on less, we're getting less, people are having smaller houses, we're releasing more and more things. Credit is, more readily available. The houses are getting way more expensive again. There's going to be a gigantic crash very soon, and a lot of people have not been through it. There's a lot of 25-year-olds. There's a lot of 35-year-olds like me that think they're doing tight right now, and then once people start saying, I got no money, I'm not giving you a Patreon, like, we're going to have to deal with shit like that.
Yeah.
It's like the world is a boom burst cycle and very fucking wild, but I don't know. I still love the ride.
Yeah.
And how like when it comes to things like that critical thing where this country becomes what we want it to be, like at this point, what has to happen? Like, Donald Trump is the president, and he's like talking about how, like, the president is a guy that goes on TV and talks about how muscular a guy is, and like that's who's in charge
He
now.
does like the big boys.
Yeah, because Brett was like, we go to everything, and we went to the inauguration, and Brett was like, why aren't we like going to the White House and just crowd surfing him out of there and just dropping him on the side of the road and being like, none of this stuff is yours anymore? Because it seems as simple as the people working in the Amazon warehouse just saying, this isn't your warehouse anymore, Jeff Bezos. This is ours now.
Yeah.
But to talk them into that, like, we can't ask people to risk their lives. They all have skin in it. It just sucks that we all have skin in the game.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing, and I think this is part of all of the reason why all of us do this is that, yes, a crisis is going to happen again. All the indications are there. Yes, the climate change catastrophe is here. We're living through it. So there is going to be disaster. The question is, which way is it going to break? Because the forces that brought us Trump, of like xenophobia and racism, building a big border wall, because when there's a climate crisis, all those migrants are going to come up. I guess we're going to mow them all down. Like, is it going to break in that direction, or are we going to do the hard work, all of us, not just in the studio, obviously, but across the country and the world, to make sure that it breaks in the right way?
I don't think that I do not think that this country is conservative at all. Like, I don't. This idea that the whole middle of the country is these really conservative people with these conservative values that think that you need to earn health care and think that you need to earn everything, they don't exist. If you sit down and talk to somebody, every single thing we believe in, they believe in, but they think is impossible because they've been told their whole life that this stuff is impossible. It's just... You can't, like, it's basically like we need to I'm not going to figure this out, but we need to figure out a way to convince them, like, this is socialism, but like, it's not socialism. This is some other kind of socialism, this is like American socialism, and it's different, and but give them everything that they have, A lot of people just want money. I mean, like, the UBI thing sucks.
Gang.
A lot of people hate the idea of UBI, but me and Brett talk about this a lot. Like, if we just gave people that extra $600 a month that they need to be comfortable, I can speak for myself that, like, I was miserable for a long time, and then this podcast, got me to $2,000 a month. Then it got me to $2,500 a month. And when I got that, and it seems like every time I get $500 more a month, my life gets just a little tiny bit easier. So it just seems like, man, if we have the money to let Jeff Bezos have all these resources, why can't we just give everybody $1,000 a month? Because the Democrats see that as weakness. When the Democrats come out there and they talk about this stuff, they're like, we're not just giving stuff away, and it's like, no, we should not just give stuff away.
Yeah, this is something I was actually going to ask you about a little later in the show, but I think it fits here. How you feel about stuff like the federal jobs guarantee and the Green New Deal, which aim to get more people working instead of fewer, versus a UBI, which has kind of been hijacked by libertarians. But like, just as someone with very strong anti-work politics, the idea of employing more people, just like, I know why they're doing it, but it makes me so bummed.
Well, it depends on what because I think it's weird because me and Brett talk to so many people that are so alienated at their jobs and stuff. It's like, what is this work? What is this federal work guarantee? If this is like fixing the infrastructure, I'll do it. You know, like that's something I would do. That's something he would do.
I do it for a living. Get me some more union work. I'll take it.
Yeah. If that's what that is, that's great. But I have a feeling that a lot of it's going to be filling out spreadsheets and busy work.
Maybe working for some subcontractors, perhaps.
Temp jobs.
Temp work, yeah. Well, I worked at the Abercrombie and Fitch warehouse, and they would bring in tons of temps, and then just throw them out, and then like let them leave. And it was always. They were like a threat. Like they would say stuff, like we could always just hire them to come do your job. It's like, fuck, Jesus Christ. Like the workplace is already so antagonistic. Throwing more people into that does not sound like a good idea to me. Especially, get rid of the bullshit jobs, and then every job split it in half, split it between two people, right? So then there's like an 8-hour day workday becomes 4 hours for two people. They both get paid for 16 hours.
So this is a subject I wanted to talk to you guys about, which something that I really like about your show. I think is very unique is your call-in shows when you just talk to people about their jobs. And that's something that I think a lot of political podcasts are missing because we focus on these macro politics, what politicians are doing, what, something that's going on in another part of the world. It's important stuff to know about.
Ourselves included.
But the vast majority of people just care about their day-to-day lives and, what kind of money they're making and if they're going to be able to afford what they can afford. And that's where politics is most obvious to most people. And there was a group in Italy in the 60s who pioneered this thing called the Workers' Inquiry. Where they would go to factories and just interview workers and say, what's your job like? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? How do you think things could do better? And they were these outside militant communist radicals who used those answers to figure out how to intervene in work. And I see your show as performing a function like that, or an Ohio Operaismo, I like to call it.
I like that.
Well, a little before you answer, a little closer to home too. There was also the Johnson Forest tendency, which were like post trots, and they were more in your area. They were around the same time Andy was talking about. They were in Detroit. And they were doing the same thing. They were not going to people and telling them, like, this is what you want, this is what you need. But, again, getting that feedback just like you guys do on the show. So talk a little bit about Ohio Operaismo for us. Or the Brett Bryan tendency, whatever the case may be.
I know. I love Ohio Operaismo. That's going to be like a new sticker.
I love it.
Well, eventually, it was great when we were both working and we were doing the show because it was just like, oh, you're not going to believe this bullshit that happened today. It's going to be so good on the show. And Brian drove Lyft up until a few years ago, and those were always good stories too. And so after that fell off and we knew we had a big enough following, because here's the thing about call-in show, we were not going to bomb it. We were not going to be like, oh, guess nobody's up tonight. So we waited until we had that critical mass and hooked it up, and it has been like a godsend because it gives us so much information that we never got before, and it refreshes us on what's going on. People hip us, what new management styles are, or the metrics and the GPS and the technology and how that's affected their work and everything. And it's great, and I know it's cathartic for a lot of people, and there's been so many weird things that happen on there and great things. I was talking to a guy last night. He called us because he was an art hanger here in New York City and was looking to do something about the labor practices and unionizing the thing. And later in the show, I think OK Fox from the Art and Labor podcast called in and was like, oh, I can totally help that dude. And they hooked up, and now he's like organizing and active and everything.
Awesome.
That is what's up.
Good podcast, by the way. Check it out.
I think also it's cathartic for me. When I was in my 20s and my early 30s, I worked at a call center for a year.
Oh, me too.
I worked as a roofer for 6 months, a call center for a year, and then I worked at the cable company for 7 years. And at all those jobs, every day I woke up, I would do this thing where I would just cough really loud. And I don't know why it was, but it felt like I could cough this anxiety out of my stomach. And by about the midpoint of the cable job, I was just going outside and throwing up in my bushes every morning, and just like was just so nervous every day on the way into work. I would get to work, and it would seem like everybody else there belonged there. And it would seem like everybody else there was very comfortable and knew that their job was going to be there forever. But I never felt that way. I never felt that comfort. And I wish that somebody had pulled me aside in my 20s and said, like, we are all nervous. Everybody is like on a razor's edge. But when you go out to a bar, you're spending money that you probably don't have, but you're pretending like you have the money so nobody knows that you don't have the money, you know? And then that's why everybody's so nervous. And I see the call-in show as a way for everybody to talk to each other and be like, hey, we're all broke. All of our jobs are fucked up. Everything's bad. And it's also like these small business people are crazy. Those stories are maybe sad.
Oh, man.
They're sad, but they're entertaining. And like people like to hear them, and they like to hear that sort of thing. And I'm real glad that people feel comfortable talking about their jobs on our show, because I think like when Chapo hit, we sort of felt like why should we cover pundits and politics when they do it perfectly? So what can we do that they can't do? And it was basically, we decided we were going to be the news of everyday life. That was the very early idea early in the show, but I think that is something that I truly wish mainstream media would steal that from us, because I think that like it would wake, so that's how you get to class consciousness.
Yeah.
You don't tell them about the politics, you tell them about the problems, and then the solutions are obvious once we all know the problems.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, when you listen to NPR, right, and they talk about work, it's always about some entrepreneur who started from nothing and now he's a celebrated CEO and he's rich, and it's these beautiful stories about plucky young men or women who are making their way in the world, creating jobs and all this shit. That's not just like the American ideology, but that's just like the propaganda that's constantly fucking like drilled into our heads.
Yeah, same with the money stuff. They have people on there that are like, "What do you if you're a little behind and you only have $10,000 in your 401k?"
Fuck
I'm like,
you.
I just got a payday advance loan to pay off another fucking payday advance loan.
Yeah. God, that stuff is so important. Like what you said about feeling less alone. Like, I guess we can all get into our stories about our terrible, terrible jobs, but like...
Sam Cedar, stop listening now.
He doesn't listen. It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sitting in your chair. Well, that's how we'll know. But my first real job out of college, I was working at a reference periodical as a staff writer, writing biographies of notable individuals, which like sounds like a pretty good job, except for the fact that I had to be in the South Bronx at 8:30 in the morning every day. And it was slowly driving me insane. And I spent so much time like just beating myself up about it, because I was like, everybody else seems to be able to do this like it's normal and it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And then I had my liberal guilt come in like, oh, it was probably my privileged upper middle class upbringing. I'm just like a piece of shit who like so many people have it so much harder than me and I can't even do this. Mm-hmm. And like two things from that, right? That's another thing that keeps workers from gaining class consciousness. They think of class as an identity and not your current position within a society, and it keeps a lot of white-collar workers and downwardly mobile kids like me from forming unions and doing all the things that we need to do in order to lead a good life. Like, it's not just going to happen for us. And it also, like... This is actually a line that I wrote in my chapter from my book that I think you said to me last night. And I was like, wow, are we having a mind meld or what? Like, I hadn't yet realized that I am totally normal and it's work that is bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the thing that's fucked up. Like they're like the system works, but everybody in the system's miserable and they all have the same problems and the same anxiety. So maybe it's not but like then they become experts in human nature. Like it's such a hard conversation to have with people because my parents. I said this on stage last night, but it was very weird. I grew up in a very weird situation where like. my dad was one of the earlier computer programmers in Ohio, so he did make a pretty good living, and my stepmom made a pretty good living. We lived in a very working class neighborhood, which meant that we were rich kids in a weird way, but there were 5 of us, and we weren't rich at all.
No. His house didn't even have a fucking front porch.
Yeah, but
it was just looked like a drop off.
It was pathetic.
No awnings, and no fucking trees. It was a miserable house.
But we grew up believing that we had more.
That's so American.
Yeah. And then when I got out, like, I had a lot of guilt because I was dirt ass poor when I moved out of when I got kicked out of my parents' house. I was like dirt ass poor for 15 years. And like, I didn't know why I'm getting payday advances. I'm doing all this stuff. Like, why couldn't I have just been them? They didn't go to college. They did fine. But that's because none of the stuff was there.
Old economy Steve.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the coda to this story is I was like a trapped animal. I needed to find a way out. It was 2008, so there were not a lot of other jobs waiting for me. But I met an editor from Vice at a party full of really cool lesbians that I wanted to be friends with. And I was telling her all about my job. And like Vice was like very cool in 2008, if you do recall.
Not so much anymore.
Yeah, like if you claim you never thought Vice was cool, you're lying. I'm sorry. So I was telling her about my job, and she's like, you should write about that for me. And I was like, oh, cool. I get to write for Vice. And I wrote a blog post about my job and how miserable I was and how much I hated it. And then I got fired.
Oh, good work.
So I guess I did get myself out of there.
Got what you asked for.
That's the only way, though. That for a lot of people, that's the only way to get out of the situation, because I think I told you this last night. I was working a job at a camera store making $8.50 an hour that I was terrified of losing. I was just going home and having panic attacks every night, terrified that I was going to lose a job that was paying me $8.50 an hour.
Cucked by capitalism. That's all of us, right?
Yeah, I that's actually the pretty brilliant point there about class being an identity thing, because it is a matter of statistics. It's a matter of like, it's a sliding scale. The money is distributed. If you're under this line, you're going to struggle, and it could just be funneled the other way and level the whole thing out.
I've got I think we all have some miserable work stories we'd like to unburden ourselves with.
Hit it.
And,
Please,
so
Andy,
I
hit
have
us,
one.
yeah.
For my first several years, really way too long, living in New York, I delivered food for a living at restaurants, and I worked at a number of restaurants. And at one point, I was working at 2. One was like kind of a like a very well-run corporate sort of business, and the other was a punk-run diner in Williamsburg.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. R.I.P.
No, unfortunately, it still exists.
Oh, it wasn't Food Swings?
No. Oh my God, I wish I worked for Food Swings. But so this was a place that
Shout out to Freedom.
A guy from a popular, cool punk band opened this place or managed it, and he said when I was hired, "There's no managers here. We're all equal. If we have a problem, we can all just talk it out."
Oh, no.
And so I worked for him for almost a year, including through the winter, doing bike delivery through the worst winter probably in 100 years in New York. Like, it was just under 20 degrees, like every day, freezing, just infuriatingly dangerous and bad. And at the end of the winter, I was going to take a couple months off, and I gave them, because I had so much respect for them, I gave them a month notice. And within the month notice, they fired me.
Of course, they did.
No warnings. And I said,
But there's no manager who can
exactly. That's
you.
what I said. I was like, so what happened was I like mouthed off to the person who fired me. And they said, well, you mouthed off to a manager. You can't do that. I was like, oh, so now there's managers.
They love to
When
have
it's firing time.
It's your family.
Oh,
Hey,
you're an associate, not an employee, right? That's the whole thing nowadays.
the partner.
Partner.
Well, I was in Starbucks the other day, and there was a sign that says, "It's our partner of the month," and it's like, that's not a partner,
That's
motherfucker.
so
This
fucking
isn't a law
insulting.
firm, and these people are making $10 an hour. Go fuck yourself.
I made partner at the Starbucks.
Yeah.
Because I don't think about that stuff anymore. At every job I had, you were a fucking employee, because my goal at every job was to be a number. I just wanted to be a guy that was a number that nobody ever paid attention to. So like I did all employee jobs. So like the partner thing or the associate or whatever they're calling you, that is all so brand new to me to hear. And that's, I think it's for like service jobs and it's for white collar jobs that are like, oh, let me let you know that you're part of this thing, you know?
Oh yeah, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
You got one, you got one for us, Brett? A bad work story? Or several.
Or do what you love and you'll ruin that thing for yourself forever is what I say.
I don't know. I can't think of. I actually I want to tell someone else's story, and
do it.
If you find this out, Subway guy, I owe you some money because I've been making a lot on this story.
We have told this story a few times. It's a story from Iowa, from Des Moines, Iowa, that a guy told us.
Yeah,
Give it to me.
when we do the live shows in places where we don't have 6 people on stage with us, we let the audience tell us stories. This guy worked at Subway and was closing up for the night and was going to take the trash out and put like a rock by the door to leave it open. While they were going to grab the trash, they turn around and there's a guy with a knife and they grab them and hold it to their throat.
Ugh.
Jesus.
Tell him, give me everything in the register. He opens it up, gives it to him. Guy runs away. He's lay on the ground, whatever, and the guy runs away. So he calls the cops and he calls his manager. And his manager gets there first and says what happened, tells him all. He goes and watches the video and then sets him down and says, I'm a little confused here. Why did what did he say? You're bigger than that guy. Why didn't you try to fight him?
Wow.
And then he's like, he had a knife to my throat. I wasn't going to fight him. And he goes, but why did you get the money out of the register for him?
Oh, my God.
He's like, you could have made him do that.
Oh, God.
Wow. I mean, I don't like the idea of people laying down their lives for their country.
Agreed.
Doing it for Subway is like beyond the pale.
Some Subway franchise owner guy that's just like, I think
Jared would have done it. Jared Fogle.
I have like this weird thing about franchise owners because like I have a little bit of respect for somebody who comes up with an idea for a restaurant and puts together a menu and a vibe in the restaurant, you know, plays the right music, sets everything up, has this really great food and stuff. But then like a franchise guy is just somebody who is like, no, I'm just going to buy the whole restaurant idea from Quiznos and just do it. Like I can't, my theory is those are the worst people in the entire world to work with and just in the entire world.
Small business tyrants.
Yeah.
We are definitely going to interrogate the small business tyrant because I think that ideology that small businesses are like these great things is like super pernicious in America. But yeah.
Can I say that though, like, the only reason we bring up the small business tyrant thing is because like it is an interesting conversation to have about like, is it better to just get a job at I don't know, Huntington or Nationwide Insurance, a huge company where there's hoops that your manager has to jump through to fire you. You know exactly what you're getting. You know exactly what your wages are going to be.
How many
all of
TPS
that.
reports you have to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Or is it like, okay, so I'm working for an entrepreneur now, and he's just an insane guy, and he runs the company, and he makes me do everything his way, or he beats me up, or he does weird, like Brett had a guy that like did a weird massage on his back and shook him
He
once.
Joe Biden him.
No, he like
He did
grabbed
not.
me. He gave me like a hard shove because I was on social media. And it was just like,
Wow.
Or I had a guy screaming. I worked, this is why it came up. So what happened was I'm working for a guy who owns a restaurant, and it's not it's a deli, okay? Like any New York deli here. But it's in the basement of a bank building. So it's like there's no way it can fail. There's no way a business like that can fail because everybody just comes downstairs for lunch and then they leave. He's going to make all of his money at lunch. He hires felons, this guy. So he hired a bunch of ex-felons. I was working with all these ex-felons in the kitchen. One's a dishwasher. And he treated them like trash. Like he treated them like actually screamed at them every single day. And like I was like, there's nothing they can do. They can't leave. They can't go to the person above them. They can't go to human resources. They can't do anything. It's like his way or the highway. And these are the jobs that, like, these guys, that guy that hires felons and screams at him are what Hillary Clinton is like, she's like, we need more of these. Right. And it's like, we don't need more of those.
Heroes of this
we
country.
Need millions of Amy
creators.
Klobuchars running franchises across the country.
Exactly. And like with the small business tyrants, they're the ones that will also lean into like, we're like a family here.
Right.
And in my family, we scream and yell at each other when we do something wrong. We rub our faces in it, whatever.
We let people have knives held to their throat and yell at them for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got like a best case scenario with my small business tyrant. He's very nice to me. He lets me use his studio for free.
Well, we hire people now too. My wife works for Street Fight. My brother, my daughter works for us, and
it's his whole family basically. And then
Brett just hires my family. My cousin does stuff for us, but like. I love yelling at them. It's wonderful, and they should never have to deal with that.
Well, I think, a lot of this conversation has been about the alienation of work and also this tyranny that if it was anywhere else, in the world would seem completely like out of place and people will reject. But when you're at work, it's like just supposed to be normal.
Or if the government were doing that
Yeah,
to you.
right, exactly. I got, I kind of a two-parter, right? So when I left, when I got out of high school, barely, I made it out. I grew up middle class, and my father told me, he said, if you're not going to go to college, you're going to do what I did, which is go work in a factory. So I said, okay. So I went, I got a factory job. I worked a night shift at this elastomer factory for a year and a half. Everybody was completely atomized. There was no camaraderie, no conversation. It was just you in front of an elastomer mill all day, just working all night actually. And I think I was making $9.17 an hour, which actually in 1998 was not that bad. But night shift, I was like a vampire. I never saw the fucking sun. Completely fucking miserable. And it worked. My dad was like, "You're gonna do this, and you're gonna hate it. Then you're gonna go to college," which actually did succeed. So I quit that job, completely alienating and shitty experience. And then I went to college. I dropped out, went in, I dropped out. And eventually, me and a lot of my friends in our early 30s, we decided to get serious. So I joined the trades. I went into an apprenticeship program with the union that I'm in now. So to give the other side of the thing, what's possible when there's solidarity, for example, and when there is, the elements of class consciousness, a little story. We know wage theft is a huge deal in this country, right? A lot of your callers, I'm sure, talk about that. We were on the job maybe about a year and a half ago. And we got there at 7 a.m., as we always do. We start working, put our tools on, go out, boom, 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 bang, bang, bang. And all of a sudden, my shop steward gets a call. And he yells, everybody come here, come here. So we all come, and he says, tools down. We're like, what? He says, tools fucking down. Take your fucking belt off. Okay. Put the tools down, put our hard hats in the shanty, go sit down. It was the winter. We sat in a warm car for 2 hours. We're like, what the fuck's going on? And as it turns out, he got a call from our business rep, right? The company that we had been working for, which had tons of jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of jobs, all the way from Montauk to fucking New Jersey and 5 boroughs and everything. They were $2 million behind on our benefits, right? So we shut down, our union shut down every fucking job that they had, 17 fucking jobs. If we're not working, nobody's fucking working. And guess what happens in those 2 or 3 hours that we were sitting? They had a fucking courier go from Midtown Manhattan down to our union hall with a cashier's check for $2 million. That's when we put our tools back on and we went to work, right? So that's it was beautiful. And there's a lot of issues, of course, with all unions. Building trades are very reactionary, right? But in this instance, it shows just the basic elemental factor of we are workers, we have rights, you do not fuck with us. And if you fuck with us, we will fucking strike. We will do a job action, and you will be forced to do what you should have done from the beginning, right? So, I think ultimately those two experiences were completely, the obverse of one another. And I think for the people out there who are interested in making their work lives better, if they don't have the opportunity to drop out of the workforce and just live independently, or there's no UBI or whatever, start talking to the people at your job, start talking with them about organizing. It's really fucking hard, but we had the biggest strike wave in decades last year, especially with the teachers. It is possible now. The material and social conditions are there where if you feel that alienation, you're not alone. As we've all been saying, you're not alone. Everybody feels that. And the best thing to do is to fight back, and you can only do that collectively.
Yeah, and I mean, and young people are getting back into it. I mean, are understanding. I've done this week. I talked to the Pitt grad students who are having an election for a union this week. I talked to the Little Big Burger Union. We talked to the Burgerville Union. So we do like to, when we can, spread that message and let people know. And it's incredible. I get emails all the time from tradesmen as well that are telling me, like, I'm making $38 an hour as a lineman out here in North Dakota, living like fucking John Wayne. And I love it, And I would love to get more of those interactions on the show and a part of it. But it was like, that was the frustrating for me. I did the same thing. My dad was a forklift driver, so I'm like, I'll go get my fucking license and I'll do that. And then we were getting less and less every single year. We were getting like a one paycheck at Christmas. They'd give us an extra paycheck, and it got whittled all the way down to a fucking lottery for a ham.
Oh, jeez.
And it was like, fuck, this shit has drastically changed.
I'm vegetarian, goddammit.
And I did everything to try to rile people up, and nobody wanted to do it. And I was just like, all we have to do is just stop. If we don't work, if we don't work, they can't do shit about it.
Well, and that's actually part of my story is that a lot of the unions, like the one I'm in, we're coasting on like 100 and something years of past people's struggles. We still have our union. Those linemen have that, a union job because people in the past went on strike and organized, got beat up by the cops, got beat up by the scabs, this, that, and the other thing. Like I'm fortunate enough to have entered into that, but we do need a new wave, where people are actually starting to self-organize. Yeah. That's the way it's going to happen.
It has the fight for 15 fizzling out a little bit lately. It feels like maybe we have to do this one by one in a way. Like the people in Minneapolis, the Jimmy John's union people have the IWW. They really like. I've been very inspired by the IWW, and that like. It's not an all or nothing proposition. I hate this idea that you have to have a union vote, and if it fails, the union votes out. Like, oh, well, it failed. Fuck it. We don't get to have a union. Where, like, you can just do these little if we can even just get people to do individual actions to improve their working conditions in the place that they're at, that's a big step towards actually just having a union. You're like, well, we've done this. We got a fan in the kitchen. We got an extra $1 on each other's pay. And we've had a lot of calls from people who have done small individual actions at their jobs that have improved their conditions. And I think that's kind of a way to go, because the all or nothing proposition, unfortunately for us, union is a very good word, but there are a lot of people out there where it's not, and I don't, here it probably is still good in New York, but in the Midwest, I would just say union in the break room. And like the joke is always like, oh, don't say that too loud here. You're getting a lot of trouble.
Right. Yeah, which is fucked up.
They did earn a reputation for corruption at certain points in history, and people probably people from a certain era associate them with organized crime and shit. But like, it's better than nothing.
Well, right.
Like,
the reason
if you
why
want to make a better union, make a better union.
And the reason why that corruption was able to enter into the labor movement is because the self-organized grassroots militant activity of the workers had died off, and what replaced it was this kind of parasitical, gangsterism on top. It was a reflection of the failure of workers to keep pushing things forward. And on your point, which I think is a really good one about the labor law and this, that, and the other thing, I've said this on the show before. We've all said this, is that we need to do what people did 100 years ago when they did not have the right to organize. Is we need to act as though it were allowable. We need to break the law.
Yeah.
That's parity.
Yeah.
No, you should be going and doing labor actions, even if they're illegal, as long as you can get enough people together, because that's the only way that you change the laws is by basically making a fait accompli, right? Like, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, the wildcat strikes from the teachers was like the most inspiring thing that kept me going for a while, because Brian and I have always been supporters of unions, but it's like, if you don't like the fucking union, just don't do what they fucking say, like make a new one, and create something that is better than what has been made before. Yes. To respond to your point about their history. But
women in the Maquila zone in Mexico had to strike against their own union, which was very much in bed with the ruling party in the 80s and 90s.
You do what you have to do, but you don't just fucking give up, right? You keep pushing towards, like you said, towards better working conditions and staying involved with it, and not letting it get out of your hands.
And I get so annoyed with liberals sometimes. Like, even on this show that I work at, like, Sam will have someone on and do a very granular discussion about labor laws or about Supreme Court decisions and how, it's really going to suck if unions are made illegal or we get federal right to work or the Supreme Court decision. But, like, what do you think's going to happen if that happens? Are people just going to, like, lie down and say, all right, you won, that's it, we're your slaves now? No. Like, how do you think we ever got anything? People are going to have to break the law.
Yeah.
People aren't going to know either. That's the other thing. Like, it's like if the Supreme Court's like, oh, we have federal right to work now, it's not like every person that has a job is going to be like, oh, well, I guess we have federal right to work now.
Yeah, no.
We can't do anything.
That's a very good point.
Well, and also, too, like, a lot of the wildcat strikes you're talking about are people feel like they're inventing them, but like it's just a resurgence of something that happened in the past. A lot of those teachers might have not known what a wildcat strike even was, even though they were doing it, right? So I think our job, all of us, I mean the left in general, is to like make those connections and help people understand their own self-activity when they're out there, right? And the issues they face on the job. But this brings us to something we've been dancing around a bit, because we've talked a bit about how horrible work is, how horrible business owners, including small business tyrants, are. We've talked about, how to just like have a better life at work. What about the question of there not being work as we imagine it? What about the question of anarchism? Because you guys are committed anarchists. So talk a little bit about, I think you mentioned about the crisis in Obama, right? Radicalized you, Brian. But where do you guys see yourselves in terms of this political question? Like, what does anarchism mean for you?
And how did you come to it?
I guess for me, how I came to it was very weird. I just said, Brett, I think I'm an anarchist. And he's like, yeah, you should be.
That's a good friend.
Well, no, because we get a lot of shit sometimes because we talk about socialism and communism and stuff like that. And we do call ourselves anarchists. And for me, anarchism is not like the whole of your beliefs, I guess. Like, you don't just say I'm an anarchist and that's all that you are. It is an organizing principle to me that I think everything needs to be as flat as possible in every aspect. That's not to say that people can't take leadership roles in movements and things like that, and that there's not like voluntary kind of leaders. But I think that like the wealth this thing should be completely even. We should all just have the same amount of resources. The wealth distribution should be even. And that like any movement needs to be shooting for anarchy. Like in the end, to me, that I'm going to be involved in, we need to be shooting for anarchy. I don't know what it's going to take to get there, but like as a principle, I think anarchy is the number one is the best possible solution. That is utopia. That is the end goal. And I don't want people to like forget about the fact that the end goal is all power to all the people.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
For me, I mean, I was reading books and stuff. I got really into conspiracy theories for a while, and that was enough for me to start hating Democrats because they did enough of that both sides are bad shit. But then when they started saying people had mind controlled and shit, I was like, I can't make sense of that. I can't tell somebody that's the news.
You had me till the lizard people, right?
Right. So reading books by like Noam Chomsky and other just texts and things got me to think about it. And after Obama got elected and they were saying that he was a socialist, and I thought his preacher was fucking awesome, Jeremiah Wright, the stuff that he was saying.
I was so into that guy.
I was a little convinced that like Obama was a Molotov cocktail of some sorts. Like he was going to be really hardcore, like lovey-dovey liberal that wants to give everybody everything that that has been was the stereotype of those people for me growing up. And it wasn't, it's not that case at all. And for anarchism, to me, I think is an individual thing, but the people that identify as it have a good head on their shoulders normally, understand a lot of the struggle that goes on, and are not majority white guys. The original anarchist people that we were hanging out with on Twitter were non-binary people, were POCs, and have a lot of illuminating information, that made sense. And, the other people that are involved are all, like I said, people that I trust and people that, obviously there's problems with any sort of, once you start having a label, then all of a sudden there's going to be a creep that does it. But the people that are really down for the cause are really going for something along the lines of like camaraderie and mutual aid. And that's the extent of it. I would love to, we talk too much about like money and stuff. I'd love to go moneyless society or like resources shared. But I just can't imagine as much success I've had in my life, I can't imagine needing much more than right now. I actually had like a mental break last year because I would just buy stuff and then be like, well, I want those shoes now. And I had the money to just swipe my card and get the shoes now. And it was like, this is so fucking draining, just to be in a constant consumption cycle. And, I think about things like all of the tools that are like sitting in people's sheds. There's like in my neighborhood, there's probably 500 saws that are not being used. They're being used for probably 30 minutes a summer. When
boomer dads who want to do a little project every once in a while.
And we had hundreds of thousands of people get together to make sure that hundreds of thousands of saws came overseas, and we did all of this when we could have just fucking shared.
Yes.
100 saws.
It's such a radical but simple idea if you imagine what a library is for books. Right? Why can't there be a library for tools? Mm-hmm. Right? Like I need a hammer, I need a fucking hammer drill,
Instead, Walmart will say, we got a drill for 1998 and it's going to fucking break on you. And then you just throw it away and go buy another one.
And it's exploiting, people in China who are getting paid almost nothing to make it.
Also, anarchism does a flatten everything for everybody. And it was like views the the people that I was paying attention to understood imperialism and weren't just like, well, if it's legal in their countries, they can do whatever they think they want, man. Like nothing was about anarchism. Never led to pedophilia the way that libertarianism does.
Well,
never say never.
Hakeem Bey might have gone that direction.
I think
there's never been an anarchist reign of terror either.
No.
Like people want to talk shit on anarchists as being
that's 'cause they lost,
violent or the propaganda of the deed or whatever.
There were
but
a few priests who got hung in Spain, but whatever.
But like compared to say Marxist-Leninism, I think we're doing pretty good.
Well, let's say like I want to actually get back to something you both kind of touched on, which is the day-to-day practice, right, of community building and mutual aid, right? And then about Brian, what you said about like that's the end point, that's the goal. We never need to lose sight of that. I think it's a really important thing. Jamie and I talk about this all the time. It's like a lot of what we do, whether you're a socialist, whether you're a communist, whether you're an anarchist, right? That's as long as you have this horizon that is beyond those day-to-day struggles and a horizon that's beyond just Medicare for all, which is good, right? Or just better workplace regulations. As long as we're thinking like in, I hate to say it, but a utopian fashion about like the best way to organize a fair, safe, and like, I don't know, friendly community and society and world, right? That's what it's all about. And if you're an anarchist, right? I'm sorry, but like Marxists out there, I know you're listening. If you're a Marxist, you understand that the end state of communism is also anarchism, right? No state, and from each according to their ability to each according to their need. So it's really just it's not just semantics, but it's also just like we all kind of want the same thing, and we just need to just keep plugging away at it, whatever you call yourself.
I mean, if we're not thinking about utopia, then like, what are we even doing? Really, if the end of this isn't utopia, then what's the point? If the end of this is just bickering over the next thing.
We're going to preserve the status quo forever, which totally is a thing that can happen, and everything will be fine.
It's going great. Everything's great.
I mean, we've been told for when me and Brett became friends, and we haven't known each other forever. We became friends in like 2009, and like we hang out with a lot of pretty successful, like in the regular business world type people when we're at home, and we've been told like that we're unrealistic for the entire time that we've been kind of going through this. We're too weird. It never happens in this world, and I highly recommend it. Two guys that found friends in their 30s. Like it just isn't a thing that happens like where like two men become friends and they're like, but
doesn't happen enough.
Yeah, but it happened, and like we both kind of went through these things, and we disagree on things, but both of us in the end really do believe in a utopia. We want a utopia. I don't think I'm going to live in a utopia. I don't think he's going to live in a utopia, but if we're not thinking about a utopia, then I don't know. I don't see any point in doing anything.
And your daughter, you would want to live in a utopia.
I don't think she's going to either, but she's a pain in the ass.
Maybe she can bring us one more step closer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
One step closer to the edge before it all breaks.
Exactly.
New metal there. New metal callback.
I wanted to ask you guys how you feel about the current wave of sort of social democratic socialist electoral politics. Because we've been seeing this around the world with the rise of Bernie Sanders in the U.S., Jeremy Corbyn in the U.K., we got Podemos in Spain, we got Syriza in Greece, they already screwed the pooch, whatever.
AMLO in Mexico.
Like, how do you feel about this wave of sort of left-wing populism as expressing itself in the electoral sphere?
I think I like the idea of a 1-year project to get something that will have concrete results. I'm not going to do it. I can't get behind a Bernie. I can't get behind anybody. Like, this is not a slight against Bernie. This isn't a slight against anybody that or whatever. I can't get behind a guy. He likes war a little too much for me. He's okay with war, but I do think it's okay to do these little 1-year projects. It doesn't hurt anything to spend a year trying to figure out how we can get a concrete thing to happen. And then once that's over, move to the next thing. But we need to make sure we move to the next thing. Because what happened with Obama was like, we did spend a year making a thing happen. And then as soon as that happened, a lot of us went home and did nothing for 8 years. And then we came back and now we have this.
Deadass.
So I think it's smart just to, I don't think it's dumb to spend the time doing this. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to cover it. I mean, I'll cover it a little bit. It's not really our beat anyway, but like, I do think it's okay. The electoralism is okay. I wish it didn't take all the resources.
Seriously.
Yeah, no shit.
Oh, God.
We've been having a lot of discussions in the DSA right now as to what kind of resources to put into the Bernie Sanders campaign. And I just...
Are they friendly discussions?
Sometimes. And, I feel like I'm raining on everyone's parade, but I'm like, guys, this can't be the only thing that we're doing.
Yes.
We're socialists. Like, even the reforms that you want Bernie to achieve, they're only going to happen if you have lots and lots and lots of outside pressure and grassroots action.
Brett, what's your take on this?
I just forgot.
We're talking like DSA and electoralism and things of that sort.
Oh, I don't care about that fucking shit at all. I pay no attention anymore. I feel like most people are just going to show up on the day and press the button for whoever's a Democrat, and they shouldn't hem and haw about it if that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's at worst a waste of time. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in electoral politics, depending on where you live, it takes between 20 minutes and 4 or 5 hours one day, to go out and vote. Go ahead and do it, but that's not everything. Right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's what I'm against, because I saw those people waiting for that Mueller report. I sent out a gigantic. I've sent I'm not very angry on Facebook anymore, but I just saw this lady from school that was so upset about the Mueller report and all of that, and I was just made this thing about, please just do something else besides expecting someone else to solve the problem. And if you are really anti-Trump, you have to fucking prove it. You can't just say you are. There's actions you can do, and I expect to see you in the streets, because there are a lot of people waiting for you to fucking show up. We're already here. That was disconcerting about the way that some of the protests go down in Columbus, is people just won't show up, and yet I go on there and I have 500 friends that are all say they're politically active and wonks and nerds and all this stuff, and they don't fucking do anything besides sit around and talk about it.
Well, some liberals did take to the streets recently in Washington, D.C., I believe, and demonstrate just because they really want the full report. They want the full report. And one guy had a sign that said, "I love laws." And I was like, this is the worst fucking protest I
would
ever
not
seen.
listen to that asshole's podcast.
I mean, unless it was like one of those Antifada guys smashed a window and then the cops are coming. He's like, all right, quick, what would a shit lib say? I know.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up, but do you want to give a plug out to this new thing, this Means TV thing? Tell us a little bit about it. You guys did a rad video.
Nick is the coolest person in the world. He was a 19-year-old kid that we met. We were doing a weed festival. We were performing at a weed festival somewhere in Michigan,
on a racetrack in Michigan.
On a racetrack
Cool.
in Michigan, and he sent Brett a DM and said, "Do you mind if I come and film you guys?" And he's the best. If he asks you to film, you should do it. He leaves you alone. He's an incredible person that will go 50 feet away from you and let you be a normal person and then come back and ask what you want. No, he's a genius. He's a great, and so we took him on tour with us for a while, and we just have a relationship with him, and he launched this thing, and Means TV is pretty much all co-op that he's trying to make. And I know that there's a lot of people who are like, Netflix for socialism. I mean, that sounds exploitive, but it's to make things happen, there needs to be money. And unfortunately, in the world we live in, if we're going to make entertainment for socialists, then there needs to be money. And I also believe that socialists deserve entertainment, and that they seeing more of it will strengthen their values and their beliefs, and that it help them explain things to their family and to other people around them. I think listening to any of these podcasts that happen, people are able to explain these beliefs that they have in a way because they've heard it explained a few times. And to have, this thing that's going to have documentaries and comedy specials and movies and television shows is crazy to me. And it seems he is good at what he does. And these things are going to look good. These are going to be high value productions. We have ideas that we want to do on there that he is going to make happen, that people will be like, I can't believe this exists.
So you're saying the ends justifies the means TV?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
All right, so folks can go to means.tv, right, and donate because they're doing a crowdsourcing fundraiser thing now?
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, he has a co-op for designing and printing shirts. He has a tech co-op that's doing in Austin that's doing all of the infrastructure for the streaming services and all that stuff. The whole thing is laterally organized, and he's going to pay artists too. So it sounds like it's an ambitious idea, but he got started as a 12-year-old kid that had a computer and video software and was doing commercials for GM and Chrysler and Ford when he was 18 years old. and just hated it and felt like a horrible person and wanted to spend time. Was doing short films about people in Detroit and what their lives were like and what organizing was like for them. And he's a brilliant dude. So I can't wait to see it when it finally happens because I've been talking to him about it for so long now. And it's going to be great. It'll be awesome.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Awesome. So, folks, go to means.tv and help them get this fucking ball
Give
rolling.
them all of your money.
All your money.
If you have any left after you give it to us.
And also Street Fight Radio. If you're not, I don't know why you wouldn't be a listener. I don't know why you wouldn't be a supporter of Street Fight Radio. But
yeah, it would seem the Venn diagram between the kinds of people who like Antifada, the kinds of people who like Street Fight is pretty much a circle.
It's almost like a circle, yeah. So, guys, thanks so much for coming on. This was a fucking blast. You guys are pros, I tell you. Sometimes you gotta just like pull the podcast out of people.
Yeah, you should do this professionally.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and good luck on your WWF thing in Queens tonight.
But don't accuse us of working for the WWE.
WWE?
We are
Good luck with your wrestling match.
Yeah, we don't work for them. They are a Trump fundraiser. They're the big Trump fundraiser, as I like to call them.
Oh,
you know, but a lot of that money that people are spending at that arena today is going to go to his reelection.
Awesome.
But we're doing commentary on his show I think on the show with WrestleSplania. We're just going to go hang out and watch wrestling tonight.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
And maybe get a couple people into like anarchism. Slip it in a little bit. Subliminal, right?
I will.
We're sneaky like that.
Hell yeah.
I'll be like, see, these two guys are working together to put on a performance for you.